also would challenge a little bit and say, is the true barrier the other people in your life, or is it that you don't give yourself permission
Yeah.
to take that time for yourself because of the guilt and all those other things? And that's a boundary. That's a hurdle you got to get over to be able to do some of these things is how can I give myself permission to, even if it's just take 2 hours to myself, or it's I'm gonna go do dancing lessons because
Right.
there's a part of me that loves music and dance, and it's a stifled part of me. Whatever it is
Mhm.
that you need.
Hi, I'm Missy Macholka, the menopause midwife. I'm here to break down all the things about menopause and hormones that seem overly complicated, which is pretty much everything. With over 10 years of experience catching babies and 2 decades of intuitive massage therapy practice, I have spent the last few years deep diving into all things menopause to figure out why so many women are suffering and why there seems to be so much confusion about hormones and menopause. Calling on my midwifery experience and my desire to help women attain and maintain full autonomy, I will stay next to you during this life transition and help to explain the options as you step into your power and find optimal health.
Welcome, my lovelies. If there's one thing midlife has taught me, it's that thriving doesn't happen by accident. It happens through intention. And sometimes that intention looks like stepping outside, filling your lungs with real air, and remembering you're still very much alive. We can get so wrapped up in the busy that we forget to enjoy the here and now. Maybe a tired trope, but we are looking at it through the lens of nature today. You might be wondering why I am talking about nature when my specialty is menopausal hormones. Well, you see, my specialty is really midwifery, which means with woman. My goal is to be with you as you discover what your best way through is. That is what midwives do. In the traditional sense of the word, we stand next to and care for women as they give birth, their way, whether it's standing, kneeling, squatting, in a warm pool, in a strawberry field, medicated or not, vaginal, VBAC, cesarean, because the journey and the woman are what and who we protect and support, not our idea of what the journey and outcome should look like. Every journey is unique, and my goal is to help you know about as many paths as possible so that you can find your best route. So today, I'm here to walk next to you as we learn from my guest about a tool right inside of you and right outside of your door. Real, raw, not on a schedule, nature. It can be your most potent midlife medicine. Jenny Golding is my guest today. She is a writer, photographer, and nature connected life guide, living with her family on the edge of Yellowstone National Park. She's the founder of Wilder Life, a sanctuary for slow living, creativity, and deep nature connection. Through her own journey of navigating perimenopause, grief, and midlife burnout, Jenny developed a powerful path back to self, one that blends nature connection, personal retreats, and transformative journeys. She helps women who feel like they've lost themselves in the wilderness of midlife, in that tangle of roles, expectations, physical changes, and old stories. Helps them to reconnect with their true selves, rediscover what lights them up, and forge a new path with clarity, joy, and purpose. For context, Jenny and I have been dear friends since about 2000. I don't think either of us can figure out where and when we actually met, but we've known each other for a really long time. We've seen each other through young marriage, motherhood, career pivots, grief, and joyful reinvention. There's a natural vulnerability here, so we might find ourselves in a few tears here and there, and we're embracing it. Welcome, Jenny.
I'm so excited to be here.
It's
I've been
so
looking forward to joining you for a while, so thanks.
Yay! I'm so glad you're here today. And while I was prepping for today, I had some really strong words come, or just a lot of words come up that I felt like might be a good jumping off point for us. And so I just wanted to share them with you. And if they felt like something you wanted to jump from, we can do that. Otherwise, we can dive into the questions also. So I just want to put these out there and see if anything comes up. So the words are daughter, mother, woman, wife, friend, boss, loss of identity, grief, caregiving, untethered, who am I, permission. And those are just some things that really came up for me and struck me as I was reading about you and what you're doing.
Yes. Well, what came to mind when you read those words is that that's the wilderness, right? To me,
Mm,
that is, in my mind, the metaphor is the wilderness of midlife is this all these roles and expectations that we have to fill and all the things that we do for others and the way whether that's mother or daughter or friend or caregiver or, chief house life director, all the things and we get lost along the way. It's kind of hard sometimes to find the path and remember the path that we wanted to walk or what is most true and full of spark for us. And so, yeah, that's what came to mind.
I love that. I love that so much. So, in all of this finding your path, like how did your own midlife experience kind of an unraveling lead you to rewilding?
I struggled for years and years with anxiety and depression and it didn't make a lot of sense to me because I was like I have this perfect life that I designed. I live in a super wild place on the north border of Yellowstone, which you know very well. And I have a wonderful husband and kid and I'm doing supposedly what I want to be doing with my life and I was just still really unhappy and these emotional things going on that I was having a hard time sorting through and then beating myself up for like why do you feel not happy with your life? What the heck's wrong with you, right? And along that way, I lost my mom to a long, slow battle with Alzheimer's, which was really tough. And I just really felt like I was lost. I had lost myself along the way. I was so busy doing things for other people, going through all the things we have to do in life and doing things for others that I didn't know who I was. And sort of the anxiety and depression was tied up in several different things I sort of can look back on. I think one, I was in perimenopause, which I still am in, so my hormones are going crazy. Also, I discovered through that process that I had ADHD, which was super eye opening. That's a whole nother tangent we could go down about sort of that understanding helping reduce the self loathing and stuff. And I do this when I say beating myself up because my husband always says, if you're listening to this, I'm kind of like waving something at my shoulder because my husband always says, do you want a stick to beat yourself with? And I just, through all that, I just really felt like, who the heck am I? Like, I had no idea who I was. I knew I wanted something more. I knew this couldn't be how I was supposed to feel the rest of my life. And so I spent a lot of time searching for what would help me. I'm like, I need a program, I need a thing, I need something I can do that would help me feel better. And I knew I needed three things. So, one, I knew I needed something that would help relieve anxiety and stress in the moment when I was feeling it. So something that was easily accessible day to day that I could use. I knew I needed space to separate myself from all the responsibilities in my life. So it was just me. I didn't have to answer to anybody, be responsible to anyone, even if that was just for a tiny amount of time. So I needed that. And then I also sort of down the road, I felt like I really needed something to pull me out of my regular routine, something that pushed my boundaries, that gave me a new perspective. And so I couldn't find anything, even in the late 3 a.m. scrolling, right? When we're all awake from our night sweats. Like, I was like, I need an outward bound for women or something. I don't know. And I couldn't find it. So I just kind of muddled through and ended up making a framework of what really worked for me. And honestly, it transformed my life. And, through these things we'll talk about, it really brought me back home to myself. And which I think that inner emotional piece is really important as we're going through these hormonal and physical shifts because that just adds stress and complication to all the stuff we're already dealing with in our myriad roles as, women in this world. So,
That is all. I think that's probably ringing true with most people, if not all, who are listening. And I wanted to back up for just a second and touch on one of the points you made about the guilt of having, I have this beautiful life. I have this husband, these kids, this home, this place that I've created, and I'm still not, who am I in all of this? And I think that a lot of women experience that, especially as our generation has careers and is, supposedly we have it all together. But midlife really shakes that up.
yeah, I feel like this idea, at least for me, I have this idea that you're supposed to be able to have it all and do it all. And I'm very sort of feminist at heart that, I should be able to do whatever I want, or whatever I believe in, whatever I'm a woman, I can achieve whatever I set my mind towards. But there's also a challenge of doing all the things.
Mhm,
And it doesn't mean we can't do that, but I think there's guilt on multiple different levels. One, why do I feel so crummy when my life is so great, But two, guilt over what am I not pursuing for myself,
mhm.
that I think might be a few layers down, right? In terms of, and then the guilt of, well, if I do this for my own mental health and my own needs, for my own path and vision, then how am I leaving everybody else who my life is entwined with? How am I leaving them in the lurch? Is that, there's guilt over not taking care of everybody else. So,
I'm so glad you said that because I love the reframe of that. How am I leaving everybody else in a lurch? Because we always feel like that. But really, what I see when I have women on my table or in my office for hormone consults and they're spun out and they're freaked out. And I say, but what are you showing your daughters and your sons
mm,
how to be great partners someday and your daughters how to be good to themselves? What are you showing them right now? I think in this discussion, we're going to give women some tools to be good to themselves and to learn how to show that to their next generation. And then we show a generation of men how to support that. And I think that's really beautiful. When you use the term slow living, what does
yeah.
that actually mean? I mean, I can imagine like a slow cooker, but I don't really know what the term means. Can you help me understand?
Yeah, to me, really, the essence of slow living means taking time to pause, even in tiny, tiny moments, what feels like small moments, right? Taking time to breathe and pay attention to what's happening right there in the moment. I mean, it's mindfulness in a sense, but to me, I like to think of it in the context of, where we are as women in midlife as peace and calm through the cracks of, sort of daily life. So, learning and training yourself to take a deep breath and smell the smell of the trees when you walk out the door, feel the wind on your cheek, or take time to say no to a few things so that you can do some mindful photography or write in your journal. So it's not even that radical to me in my head. It's just a subtle shift of how we can pay attention as a way of calming our brains.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. Just stepping outside and actually taking a breath and smelling what is happening in your environment in that moment is really amazing. And Jenny and I were in Gardner together, Gardner, Montana. And from there, you can smell the sulfur from the hot springs on some days in Yellowstone. And so I remember days when I would step outside and that smell, it smells like rotten eggs. And so some people say, ooh, that's gross, but it really actually feels very alive. And I remember just kind of sucking that in and going, "Oh, this is really," it was a visceral connection to the ground and into kind of my moment in time. So I'm feeling like, is that kind of what you mean by the slow living?
Yeah, exactly. Walking out your front door and just taking time to take a deep breath and look with sort of wide angle vision about what's out your front door, the plant by the stairs. What does it look like? Does it have dew on it this morning? Did it just
Mm,
rain? What does the sagebrush smell like? And I think, slow living as a whole to me is the way it works for me is nature connection, nature plus mindfulness plus creativity, small acts of
mm,
creativity to me is this magical formula that really can bring you into the present moment. It brings you more peace and calm without being that difficult to do.
right.
And that's part of it. I mean, we could talk about solo retreats and journeys, which are an important part of my, sort of my growth and evolution, but there's a super simple thing that's right outside our doors every day, no matter where you live. And it's called nature. And we're all like, nature, yeah, we've heard that. And this is what I'm trying to do is help people find super simple ways of connecting, even in small, tiny moments, and being able to feel the benefits from that.
And so the benefits are kind of myriad, I think. They affect the nervous system, maybe our hormones, our mental clarity. Can you talk about those for us?
Yeah, all of it. So there's a ton of research that shows the impact of time in nature, in trees in particular, but any nature will do to help boost your immunity, to reduce stress and anxiety. And I don't know as specifically about the hormonal connection, but this thing is that we evolved in nature. We evolved as we are nature, right? So there's this on a very subconscious and body level, a way that we interact with the natural world. And things are firing in our body and in our brains at all times, whether or not we even realize it. And all you have to do is just make a little bit of time. I have this program I call 100 Wild Hours because they've shown that even just 20 minutes in nature makes a huge difference in what's going on in your body. And they measure this in Japan with forest bathing. They measure, like, you go in for a forest bathing session and they measure, through your breath or saliva or something. They're like, what your stress chemicals are, your immunity cells and all that stuff, what it's like before and after this time in nature. And so there's all this stuff acting upon you without you even knowing it. So that's sort of the biological piece of it. But there's also this partnership. Like, when you train yourself to pay more attention and be more attuned in nature, answers come, clarity comes, and it just takes a subtle shift in mindfulness and awareness to open this conduit, so to speak, between us and this vastly complex world that brings us all kinds of benefits and can bring us back in alignment with ourselves. So, and that's the thing that kind of drives me crazy is it's like nature's always something that's like out there and separate. And we got to go to a big park and we got to, take a big vacation or go camping or something to get the benefits. But it's not true. It's the most egalitarian and easy thing to take advantage of. I mean, no matter where you live, there's some piece of nature right outside your door.
Yeah.
And if I can, I'd love to share a little story about
Please
that.
do.
So several years ago, as many folks do, I was self-medicating and got to the point where I was drinking way too much alcohol to try to feel better and obviously wasn't making me feel better. And, there was a point at which I decided I can't do this anymore. I'm done. And I quit cold turkey. I quit drinking. And what kept me sane and kept me on that path was a very simple practice every single day at cocktail o'clock. Whenever I wanted to have my glass of wine, I went down in the cottonwoods in my yard, in which we call it the tree palace. We named that with, our young son. And I would sit there and I would make myself sit there for 20 minutes. And I was like, if I can just do 20 minutes, that'll be fine. And oh my gosh, I would sit there, I would thrash around and my brain is spinning. And over time I developed techniques to sort of calm my brain and be more focused and open that conduit. But at first I'm just like, nothing's happening. This isn't working. Like, this is ridiculous. And then it literally was like magic, Missy. Like, there was a time, 10 minutes in, 12 minutes in. Some days it was faster, some days it was slower, but always by the end of that 20 minutes, it was like a flip had switched and I felt balanced. I felt calm. I could mostly feel it in my lungs. Like, I could
Mhm.
breathe. I didn't feel this like, shallow, we sort of it felt like I could finally take a deep breath. And I'm just like, this is freaking amazing. Like, I didn't have to do anything. I just sat here in the trees and tried to pay somewhat attention. And it's also helpful to me because traditional mindfulness things don't work like meditation doesn't work for me. Like, sitting still in a room and trying to meditate, like, no, that didn't work. So for me, the nature plus the mindfulness was what got me into that same sort of state you get if you're good at meditating.
Yeah, and I think too, like, there's a lot of talk about the walking meditation, and I think
Yeah.
that some people really need to be moving their bodies, and I know if I'm stuck on an idea and I can't kinda push through the creative process, I just take a walk in my neighborhood. I just
Yeah.
take a walk around the block or 2 blocks, and it really does clear my head, and then the ideas start to come, and I always leave the phone at home for these
You have to
little.
turn your phone off or in airplane mode or leave it at home. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, and just leave it for those few minutes, and I always say too, like, the laundry will be there. You might feel spun out and be like, "Oh, but my laundry isn't done or the dishes are in the sink." That's okay. They'll still be there when you get home. So, go do this little snack there it's like snacks. It's kind of like exercise. Like I talk about getting your bead of sweat. Like, Jenny's 20 minutes, maybe you start with 5. I don't know how I mean,
Right.
and I think that sometimes 20 minutes is kind of that magical time for sure. But if someone can only do 5 to start and then start getting in the habit, it's like really a habit for a mind, really is where the
Yeah.
health comes in. And I wanted to before I'm sorry, I'm have like 3 thoughts in my head right now and I just want to I want to hit it really quick. When we talk about hormones and the nervous system and outside, one of the things I want to hit is you mentioned cortisol and cortisol is a hormone. And so we know that it is affected by our exposure to light from our eyes without any lenses or contact lenses on. And so our hormones are really regulated by getting good natural light, especially in the morning and then in the evening at sunset. Some people get really involved in the details of that. I'm not super knowledgeable about that, but I do know that if I get out in the morning and I get some of that rising sun in my face, it is just amazing and it resets that circadian clock for the rest of the day. So, yeah, I tend to go down rabbit holes. You know the
No, that's
me.
great.
Which
Well, one thing I
yeah,
forgot to mention
yeah.
about, through the sort of the study and development of things like forest bathing, we've realized that trees emit these compounds called phytoncides
Ooh,
that are like magical good juju compounds that your body absorbs, and that's what's boosting your immune system. That's what boosting,
oh.
calming your cortisol and all that sort of stuff. And so it's like you're literally breathing it in and absorbing it through your skin, and you don't even have to do anything.
That is
So
amazing. Is that only a certain type of tree or is it all trees?
all trees, all trees.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, they found that some, like in Japan, I think cypress trees are a big deal, and, I'm not as versed in the specific science on that either, but yeah, it's any trees.
That is
So
incredible. So that kind of leads us into maybe talking about some of your retreats and what Wilder Life actually is and who is it for?
So the sort of combination of things that were very healing to me was, nature connection, these taking time to do sit spots and slow wanders, and often doing that with journaling or mindful photography, adding that creative element in there. And then solo retreats were really important to me. And honestly, that sounds so like organized and like, but usually it was like, I am about to lose my mind. I need to take a couple hours and go, for me, drive around the park. And, I would listen to podcasts, or I would take pictures, or I would arrange an overnight sleepover by myself somewhere nearby. It just, I needed to be by myself. And I think a big part of that, there's structural things about how do I take that time. But I also think the more important piece is how do I give myself permission to take that time. So I was big into solo retreats. I would just I call them the boys, my husband and son, and I would go away for a day or so. And then the journey for me was it was like my midlife, I call it my midlife journey. It wasn't a midlife crisis, but I just knew that I needed something that would push my boundaries. And for me, backpacking and wilderness has always been incredibly healing. Someone else's journey that pushes their boundary might be different. And we could talk about that a little bit. But for me, it was, I got dropped off 200 miles south of home and I hiked home through the Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness. And for me, that was the journey for which I could remember what I was capable of, and sort of unearth that person that was inside that got buried underneath all these roles and expectations and layers of life. And so really what Wilder Life is a couple of things. So I have a Substack, jennygolding.substack.com, where I write about deep nature connection and personal journeys. And there's a community there where people are striving for this sort of slow living, more nature connection, more creativity. So I have weekly prompts, mindful photography prompts to get you in a more mindfulness place to take advantage of these little tiny moments between the cracks of our life. And then I'm designing programs, the kinds of programs that I wanted. So retreats and journeys. And I've started with I'm called Wilder Women's Backpack. The very first one is this September, where it's a backpacking journey in Yellowstone National Park, where you have time and space to sort of rediscover who that person is underneath, who am I, what do I want at this stage of my life, and start to rebuild some of that confidence in self, in terms of I believe in myself. I feel empowered. I can now see what it is I want out of my life. And I feel like I have permission and empowerment to go forward and do that. And so I also am a nature connected life guide. I am trained in nature connected coaching so that, after those sorts of journeys and retreats, I can help women who have a vision for their future take empowered steps towards that in the future. So, and the reason why backpacking journeys is because, like you mentioned, walking is powerful.
Mhm.
And walking through wilderness to me is this powerful metaphor for, finding a path through all that tangle of things to find a way back to ourselves. And so that's really what I'm doing. It's multi-layered. And I guess that's where the deep nature connection, the creativity, the self retreats and my own 200-mile journey is what helped me come to that vision of what I want to do in the next phase of my life. And now I'm doing it. It gave me the confidence and empowerment to go there. So yeah, here we are.
I love it so much. Like every time you talk about something, I get like three thoughts that I want I want to explore. I was just thinking about walking and how powerful it is, like you were saying, but also with your 200-mile journey and any of you who've been on backcountry trips, like unsupported backcountry trips where you carry everything that you need on your back and you realize how little you need. It's so freeing to just be in control of all of that and all the things. They're all in one little pack on your back. I mean, it's a big pack for 200, a big pack. And I know you did have some food drops along the way, but I mean, I've done several multi-night, way deep in Yellowstone trips. And there is something about that is just the disconnection from all the connectedness here in the front country is, gosh, just thinking back on it, it gives me a breath of fresh air. Sleeping outside under the stars, and I know people are like, I don't want to sleep on the ground. But you know what? Jenny is an incredible guide. And if you're going to do any of this and you're worried or nervous about it, I would, and this is not an ad, this is like, I know Jenny. If I was going to go on a girls only trip, Jenny would have to be part of it because she's amazing with planning, helping you to be comfortable in an uncomfortable space because it is uncomfortable to go explore that side of yourself and then to do something maybe you've never done before if you're going to do something bigger like a backcountry trip. So I would really encourage you to check her stuff out if you're interested in doing something like that. One of the other things that came up for me while you're talking is your photo prompts, mindfulness photos or photography. Can you give us an example of what a prompt might be just so people can have a sense of that?
Yeah, I want to go back
Oh,
for just
sure.
one quick
Yeah.
second though, because I'm so glad you mentioned this thing about carrying everything you need on your back because it really distills life down. It's you in the wilderness. And ultimately it's you. And you carry everything you need in your heart inside. And it's the walking, to me, the journey that enables you to discover, to refine, to, sort of reclaim that ownership of self and rediscover, no, I am in there. And I am capable of guiding my life. I'm capable of powerful things. That is huge. And just honestly, it's a gift to be like, nobody can call me on the phone. I'm like, I don't have to worry about anybody else's food, anybody else's gear, whether or not they're tired, hungry, dressed, whatever. It was just me. And what a gift.
If you've tried magnesium before and thought, I didn't really notice much, it's probably because you weren't getting the right kind or enough of the magnesiums. So, magnesium breakthrough by Bioptimizers is different. It contains 7 of the 11 forms of magnesium that your body needs. So, it supports everything from muscle relaxation and better sleep to healthy digestion to calming your stress response. But what else it does is that it helps your body to metabolize your hormones. This is super absorbable. It's not just cheap forms that pass right through you. This is one of my go to supplements for anyone who's feeling tense, wired but tired, or stuck in stress mode. It's like giving your nervous system a deep breath, and your hormone metabolism is part of that. So you can grab it directly from me at ohm406.com. Just search magnesium breakthrough. I do like to make this disclaimer here. This is not a supported ad at all. This is just a product that I absolutely love. It is one of the more affordable magnesiums, too. So, super high quality, high value. If you are like, what is that one last missing piece? I feel pretty good, but I'm not feeling optimal. Throw this magnesium on there. Once you finish up whatever's in your cupboard, throw this one in. See if you feel different. I have a feeling you might be well. Okay, so let's do the photo prompt and then we'll carry on to the next section.
Sure. So the thing about mindful photography is it's not about taking pretty images. It's about the camera and usually your smartphone camera as a tool to connect with the present moment. So I call them invitations because it's an invitation to receive, not to capture a photograph, but to sort of witness, to receive. And so one invitation that I particularly like is finding the light. So going on a slow meander and looking for all the ways light shows up, whether that's silhouetted behind a leaf so you can see all the veins in the leaf, or it's, a little starburst through the trees, or it's a shadow, or it's reflected life on the trunk of a tree, or the way it shines through a window. And the thing about mindful photography invitations is that they invite you to simultaneously focus so that the extraneous noise in your head goes away because you're focused on a moment, the present moment, but it also opens you up to receiving these gifts from nature that kind of just come if you're open and ready, even if you don't know what you're looking for.
That is amazing. So just kind of back to your big 200-mile journey and trek and these, you're starting to guide these retreats. What if someone can't, or doesn't have the desire to do something that involved? Like, how do you help women create their own kind of DIY retreats without like having to get on a plane or go to a cabin in the woods? Do you have some tips and tricks for that?
One of the things I wanted to say, I'm glad you brought this up, is that what I mean by a journey is very individual. For me, backpacking is my happy place. And I love the sufferfest. It's not always a sufferfest, but I love, to me, being uncomfortable, having to deal with the elements, all of that pushes my boundaries in a way that feels good for me. Someone else, something boundary pushing might be simply going on a solo travel trip. It might be learning a new language. To me, the point is that it's something that pushes your boundaries and gives you a place from which to see the world from a different perspective. And I am happy to help women design their own sort of journey or solo retreats. And that's part of what I do in my coaching. And at some point, I probably should put together a little freebie about how to design your own solo retreat or journey. But yeah, I don't know if that answered your question or not. But
Definitely, because I think you're right. It is different for everyone. Not everyone wants to throw a backpack on, or not everyone wants to travel alone. But I think we've already talked about some really amazing little tiny snacks of these journeys along the way. And I think just to not be too redundant, but to just say it is a habit. It's something that you give yourself. It is a gift. And then in turn, when you return to your family, from these solo journeys, even if it's out to your backyard or in your bathroom with the door locked, because it could be that too. If you have
yeah.
littles, I know how hard that is. When you return to your family, you are different. You can respond in a different way to everyone. And again, you're showing your family how to support you and how to support themselves. You're showing your little kids. What if you start showing your 2-year-old how to honor herself or himself with a few moments to breathe? I mean, that is what a gift.
Yeah. Well, and you say that and I wanna laugh because I remember my son George saying to me at one point, he looked at me, he said, "Mom, you're much nicer when you've been in the wilderness." And I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna choose to take that in a positive light instead of the
Yes.
sort of negative piece of that." And we have a joke, it's like, "Okay, we take the dog for a walk, we gotta take mom for a
Take
walk,"
mom
right?
for a walk. I love it. I
So
love it.
but they can see it. They can
Mhm.
see the change. I'm fortunate in that my family situation, I have very supportive husband and child. So it's been easy for me to take this time to myself. Not everybody's that way, but I also would challenge a little bit and say, is the true barrier the other people in your life, or is it that you don't give yourself permission
Yeah.
to take that time for yourself because of the guilt and all those other things? And that's a boundary. That's a hurdle you got to get over to be able to do some of these things is how can I give myself permission to, even if it's just take 2 hours to myself, or it's I'm gonna go do dancing lessons because
Right.
there's a part of me that loves music and dance, and it's a stifled part of me. Whatever it is that you need.
I think there's so much we get caught up in the busyness of life when we really, what we do need to understand is that we do take time for the things that we know we really need, or we don't always take time for the things we really need, but we could. And it is creating that habit within that. Like I started getting up earlier in the mornings. I started going to bed earlier and getting up earlier when my kids were younger because I realized I wasn't getting my bead of sweat every day. And for me, that's my journey. That's my daily. When I don't get that, my kids say to me, Mama, I think you need an attitude adjustment. And that means go to the gym and get sweaty. And that because that's where my brain turns off. And I can because my body hurts so much when I'm doing stuff, I can't think about all the extraneous things. And I think that being in the forest or outside in nature is a gentler way to do that. And it's so beautiful. So I think we sometimes have to just shift some habits in our lives to fit that in, but it doesn't have to take your whole day. And I love stretching our edges meaningfully, like just purposefully doing hard things. And I know that has been said over and over. It's not my saying, but we can do hard things. And it's really powerful for us to do those hard things. Can you walk us through a few of your favorite rituals like sensory walks or outdoor journaling or barefoot grounding or kind of how those all kind of come together?
One of my core practices, which I talked about a little bit, is just simply called a sit spot, where you have a place that should be close to home, that's easy to get to, whether that's in your garden or it's at a near park, but someplace you can just go and sit on a regular basis that you feel comfortable and safe, but that's in nature. And you can journal while you're there, or you can just kind of pay attention to what's happening around you. And that's something that I do all the time. I do it almost every day.
Mm,
And there's a cumulative effect of doing that so that when I walk into the tree palace now, it's like my body automatically starts to relax
mm,
because it knows it has this embodied memory of what this place is for me. The other thing that I do is very grounding for me as I focus on the senses. The senses are absolutely huge for bringing you into the present moment. So I start with, just simple noticing where my breath is coming in and out of my body. And then I usually start with my eyes closed. And I have a whole, in Wilder Life, I have a whole sensory awareness meditation that takes just a few minutes. And I'll do this before I go out for mindful photography as I take a minute and I feel what I feel on my skin, whether that's the sun or it's the wind on my cheek. I smell. Do I smell the trees? What do I hear? Closing my eyes and just focusing on what's the farthest sound I can hear.
mm,
What's the closest sound I can hear? Can I feel where my body is resting on the earth, where my feet are touching the ground, where my hands are in my lap? So bringing your consciousness into what you're experiencing in your body, and it becomes this beautiful inside outside thing. And that's what I would do in the early days in the tree palace, when I was really, really struggling. My brain was like this unruly puppy, that would like wander off and I'd have to bring it back and sit it down and it would wander off. And that's how I would do it was through the senses. I'd be like, nope. And I close my eyes, focus on my hearing, focus on my skin. I take deep breaths. And sometimes I'd have to do it over and over and over and over, but it really works. And that's part of what I do with the mindful photography invitations is there's simple little things to pay attention to focus your attention on that cuts out the noise of the rest of the stuff
mm.
and brings you into that more mindful state. But you don't have to sit there and, try to meditate and be still. You're actively doing something. Those are the two main things I use almost every day.
Those sensory ones are amazing. They kind of just reorient your brain so fast, especially if you do it habitually. And you did mention your feet on the ground. Do you have any thoughts about barefoot grounding and the importance or of that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I know it's a good thing. And I try to, stand barefoot in the yard every once in a while, but that hasn't been a major focus of mine. It probably should be. But, besides just knowing if I'm out there sitting on the ground, I do when I'm in my sit spot, I will say I do try to take my shoes off when it's warm enough and let my toes and my feet sit on the ground. I'm usually in a chair or something, but I'll put my hands on the ground or I'll touch the tree trunk, so trying to have that tactile, physical connection without any barriers to something.
I like that without the barriers. Are you ready for some rapid fire questions?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Fire away.
All right. Do you have a daily mantra?
One thing that's been resonating for me lately is we choose the energy we bring.
Love that. That's beautiful. And then we're going to go way, way surfacey. What is your favorite trail snack?
Well, anything chocolate, right? No,
Yes.
so when I'm on the trail, I especially on a backpacking trip, I always have to have a salty snack mix. So I'll make my own with like sesame sticks and I don't know, crunchy things. Like it's so much of trail food and granola bars and stuff, they're all sweet and I get really tired of that. So I make my own mix of like nuts and salty things. So I'll even put corn nuts in there. I mean, they're not healthy, but sesame sticks, seeds and things, something that's, like mustard flavored pretzels. I don't know. Like I just go to the bulk store and I put a bunch in because I need that salty sort of snacky thing. And then I always, always, always have chocolate at night. And that's what's nice about being on the trail is I can't eat a whole bar. I'm like, here's my 4 little squares for my nighttime. I guess on my big trip I took those mini Reese's peanut butter cups, and I have 4 every day. And it was actually so satisfying. I'm like, I have 4 Reese's peanut butter cups, the little mini ones,
Yeah.
and I felt like, fine, but if I had that whole bag at home, oh my god, you know?
I love
So
it.
I only do that backpacking.
That is so smart. Do you ever listen to music when you're hiking?
No, never, never. And so that, sort of my favorite forest soundtrack is the birds and the wind and I don't well for 2 reasons. One, we're in grizzly bear country. So I
Mhm.
don't listen to headphones. 2, I can't stand hearing other people's music in the wilderness cuz I'm like I didn't come out here to so that's a little rant that I won't go into. But also I feel really cut off
Yeah,
from the sounds of nature and it's like and now that I've done more work and study and understanding of how much we're actually benefiting from those natural sounds is like, there's no way. Yeah.
absolutely. I'm 100% with you on that for sure. Do you have a favorite book that you've kind of felt was a touchstone for kind of a midlife reboot or just a favorite book that you just enjoyed the heck out of?
Well, I have lots of books. I'm a big fiction girl. So that's my
Mm,
escapism or fiction books. But one book that really sort of shifted my perspective was called Radical Confidence by Lisa Bilyeu. And I read that several years ago and it was a lot about, that quiet desperation inside of living the life that you built but maybe not quite the perfect fit and
mm,
sort of rediscovering that inner spark and vision and, that authentic self. That was a great book that I loved.
awesome. Okay, so if you weren't doing this for work, what would you be doing?
Nope, I'd be doing this.
Uh-huh. I love it.
Yep,
I love it. It is
yep,
totally you have found your passion. I have watched
I have.
Annie go through many iterations of professionalism, and this is the one where I have just seen you shine. So this is one of my last questions. I usually ask about what you would bring with you if you were stuck on a deserted island and you could have your 3 to 5 favorite supplements or items. But since you're in the backcountry and you choose to be there, what 3 to 5 items would you bring? Now, this is notwithstanding food and your bear spray
Yep,
because
yep.
we have to have those. So what are a couple of things that you wouldn't miss?
So a lot of people when they go backpacking, they're super into ultralight, which I am too, but there are certain things that are non-negotiable for me that a true ultralight person would never carry. One is a journal. I carry a very small journal with a very small thing of paints because I love to add color to my journals while I'm out. The second thing is tiny binoculars.
Mm.
And and that's mostly when I'm in Yellowstone because there's always something I wanna look at. And because I'm 52 and the ground is hard, I always take an extra pad
Mm.
that I can sit on outside or I put under my other pad in the tent, which is, a little excessive, but sleep is important. And then the last thing, which is True confession is I will not go anywhere without my tweezers because I have more random hairs on my face, and it drives me freaking crazy, and so that is full disclosure.
I love it. Love it.
TMI maybe, but my tweezers, they go in the backpack,
Well,
so
because you can't get them when your nails are short, so you gotta
no,
have the tweezers.
ooh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That is so awesome. So, Jenny, before we wrap up, is there anything we didn't cover that's on your heart to share?
I think that's pretty good. I would encourage folks to, think outside the box in terms of what will help you feel more grounded in yourself in midlife. Like it's your path, find your own way, right? And that I also would love for everybody to sort of think about nature. Don't forget about nature. I'm almost to the point where I don't even like the word nature because it just sounds like this thing that's external and I don't know, but it's this living, breathing, magical relationship that's literally waiting right outside every day that you can lean on and rely on to find more connection with yourself, with the world, all of it.
So true. And where can listeners connect with you online or in person?
Yeah, so I would start at jennygolding.substack.com. That's my Wilder Life community. And I don't have the backpack advertised on there. That is on a yellowstonelife.com. And then I'm on Instagram and Facebook as a Yellowstone Life. So
Okay.
any of those places.
So, a Yellowstone Life, check Jenny out. Jenny, thank you for guiding us back to ourselves one step, one breath, and one bird song at a time. If you've been feeling lost in the woods of midlife, maybe it's time to make the woods your way through. And hey, if this episode gave you that deep exhale, reminded you to breathe, or just made you want to go hug a tree, do me a solid and leave a review. It helps other midlife magic seekers find the show, and really, it does make my day. So please subscribe, rate, and review, and maybe send this to a friend who needs a little nature nudge. Your support means the world to me. Be well.
Thank you for joining me here today on The Menopause Midwife. If you'd like more information or to work with me, feel free to check out my website and book a wellness consultation at ohm406.com. Be well.